just want to welcome you guys. I am Bart Loeser. I am the founder and president of Austin Pride Toastmasters and the president of Balcones Toastmasters, which is one of the morning clubs. It meets on Monday mornings at 7 a.m. And we also, Austin Pride meets on the second and fourth Fridays at 7 p.m. So it's an evening and a morning club. And I get involved with other clubs as well. Plus, for right now, I am the Toastmaster District 55, which is the number of our district. I'm our District 55's Continuing Education Program Coordinator, which means I coordinate programs that mostly I come up with and try to encourage other Toastmasters to teach. And we've got about 9 or 10 programs going on from between now through the end of the year. And I think I've sent to most all of you a list of all those programs, although we'll be adding a few more in December. But we've got 8 programs coming up in November. So, but I want to welcome you guys all here. We have some very experienced members here, and then we also have some people who haven't even joined yet, who are involved with learning more about how does this Toastmasters program work. Well, Toastmasters has been around over about 100 years, just under 100 years. And we have in Austin, I know that some of our clubs, like my Balcones Club, they started speaking the same time I started speaking in my life. In 1962 is when Balcones started, which is when I first started speaking. So I'm pretty old. But the whole point is that, well, at least I started forming words. But what I love about Toastmasters is that we support people in being the best that they can in the areas of leadership and interpersonal communication, learning how to speak both publicly, as well as how to learn to speak in an impromptu fashion, such as if you're on the elevator with someone and you mention something like, hey, I'm wearing a Toastmasters button, and someone says, what's that about? You have to give a 30-second speech or a 1-minute speech on what it's about. It's got to be interesting, maybe tell a story. It's got to have a great opening, a good conclusion, and still be 1 minute. Because so those are called table topics, and they're 1 to 2 minutes. And the most important thing that you'll see in every Toastmasters meeting around the world, and we have almost 300,000 Toastmasters clubs all around the world, some corporate, which you can't access unless you're a part of that corporation, but then there's the community clubs where anyone can join. And sometimes even the corporate clubs open up their meetings to the public, so you could join some of those. But the great thing about these Toastmasters clubs is you can go to as many meetings as you want to go to every day. There are hundreds of meetings you could go to every day should you want. It almost sounds like an AA program, but because a lot of them are still on Zoom, you could just call in and enjoy a course in Bangalore, India. You can go to a class in Spain, or if you travel, like I do a lot of international travel. This picture is actually from the countryside in France. I realize they don't have a Toastmasters club right here, but the little city we went to does have a Toastmasters club. And all I would have to do is just find out when they meet, and I could show up. And I will tell you, even though they speak mostly French, they're trying to learn English, practice English, and they love having an American come into their class. It's like you automatically have instant friends wherever you go. So, and you will meet no higher quality of people in this world than in Toastmasters. So if you're looking to build a better social network and good quality people into your life, Toastmasters are there, because we are all about growing, learning, and challenging ourselves. And you don't find better human beings than those who are open to growth and working on doing it. Not all of you have joined Toastmasters yet, but this is for people who've recently joined. Now what is what this is really all about. This is a new member orientation class. You're not going to learn everything, but I will overwhelm you with a lot of information. This is one of the reasons why you should fall back to the document, the Navigator, which is basically where a lot of this has been developed from, because the Navigator summarizes in about 26 pages everything you need to know about Toastmasters to master your ability to make this program work for you. I'm Bart Loeser, and I've achieved what they call the highest level a Toastmaster can achieve, which is called a Distinguished Toastmaster, or DTM. This is one of my goals for you guys, is to eventually reach that level of becoming a DTM, which means that you finished 2 major paths of Toastmasters and a special project. And once you've done that, you've achieved your DTM. Generally, it takes about 2 years or so minimum to finish it. But if you were really motivated and you wanted to go to several meetings a week, you could do this in a year. So, but it is a lot. And this is a self-paced course. So it's really up to what you make of it. But I will encourage you all that if you decide to join this club, then commit to this club. I had several people who joined this club just a month or two ago. They even gave one speech at the club and now realized, oh, I've gotten really busy at work, so I'm not going to renew in October, and maybe I'll come back again some other time. But you just joined, you're just starting, you haven't even seen the benefits yet. But they had a positive experience. They just thought, well, work is more important. Well, raise your hands if you think you are important. Raise your hands if you think you want to go far in this world. You want to achieve things. You cannot do it by staying where you're at. You have to grow, and you have to make time for that growth. And I'm amazed at how few people in this world do that. They just assume it's going to happen, which usually that's not how it works. If you're a go-getter and you're proactive, like Lizzie here, or like several of you who haven't even joined yet you're in this training, I am amazed and think you're a great candidate for making this program work for you. But it's all up to you. Today, we will be focusing on these particular areas. What are your goals? Why? Can anyone tell me why it's important to have goals? Who would like
so
that?
you can achieve them.
If you don't have goals set, you're just walking around. You have to have a path you've decided you're going to walk around to and a destination point that tells you you've gotten there. That's what goals do for you. So if you don't actually have goals in your life, you're just basically floating around and wandering about, not really making things happen. Setting goals is important. So think about, why am I doing what I'm doing right now? And is it going to help me achieve where I want to go? We're also going to focus on the meeting roles, which teach you many, many different skills. It's not just about speaking. It's about learning to become a better leader and learning specific skill sets. And club meeting roles, you do that. So you're going to learn from many of the 11 meeting roles that most clubs have. Some of the basics are nine roles, but we'll go through those. The Toastmasters Pathways program is a new program that they developed that took them 5 years to develop. And they instituted it 3 years ago. And people started complaining about it 3 years ago because it completely changed everything about Toastmasters and how you learn. We no longer have manuals that you receive that you can read through and do on your own. You have to do all of that online. And if you're no longer a member, like if you didn't send your renewal payment in, you no longer can access your education program. You can only do that if you're an active member. But before, they couldn't stop you from doing it because it wasn't electronic. But it's a great program for learning, but it is something that you specifically have to take each individual project course, which is about 10 to 15 minutes, read through it, and then work that project. And it's probably about giving a speech, but why are you giving the speech? It's going to be for a purpose, and that path and that project, that pathway project, is what's going to be guiding your speeches and the decisions you make for what roles you play. Also, mentoring is an important program we should be doing at Toastmasters because we're all volunteers here, and anyone with at least 3 to 6 months of experience, if you've given 3 speeches, you can be a mentor to a brand new person because they know nothing and you know a little, and you can help them a lot with where they're at. Obviously, with my Austin Pride class, where we have 18 new people now, we need, out of the 8 people who know what they're doing, 8 people have to mentor 18 people. So we'll have to kind of buckle up and do it, twice over. But actually, a couple of the new people are experienced, so I'm turning them into mentors as well. And that's a separate course that we'll be offering next month, is how to be a mentor. We'll also talk about leadership opportunities that you can have at many different levels here in Toastmasters, and what the next steps are for you after this class. And of course, how you can get support and be sure you're supporting your club. So let's talk about goals and roles. That is our part 1. And I'm teaching this in 4 parts. So goals and roles is the first part. So what are your goals? I want you to be thinking clearly. And before we started this class, we had a few people suggest, here's my goals for this class, but what are your goals for Toastmasters? What do you want to do? Some people want to overcome fears of public speaking. Some people want to become more confident in general. Toastmasters will do that for you. Some want to learn how to be a better leader and persuade people with the ideas that you have so they follow you. How many of you have ideas in your mind and you want other people to agree with you and follow you on that. Whether it's choosing a movie to go to at the cinema tonight, or what's the next big series you're going to watch on Netflix. I'm going to persuade you to do it with my Toastmasters skills. We're all leaders in one way or another, whether you do it professionally or not. But who here can realize that it's important to master those skills? So I'd say the most important first start for Toastmasters is think about what your goals are and share that with your vice president of education. Think about how often should I be giving a speech? If I have to write a speech and give it, or, write it, prepare for it and give it, I'd say about once every 6 weeks in general. Now that could be once every 2 months, but if you've been in a club 2 months and you have not given a speech during that time, then the next meeting you should be giving a speech if you're going to be moving forward in your goals. That's the ideal. Now, I do know some people who have gotten away in my club with not giving a speech in almost a year. They come to meetings, they play roles, but they haven't given a speech. And I'm not okay with that. I want you moving forward with your goals. And speaking is a major part of that. So think about what your goals are and share that with your vice president of education, because their job is to make sure you're going to achieve your goals in the time frame you're going for. I'll also teach you guys on here about what SMART goals are, because how do you know that this goal you wrote down is even an achievable or a good goal? Well, it's going to have to be specific. It needs to be measurable. It needs to be achievable. It's got to be relevant to what you're going for. Because if you're doing something that's not going to lead you to the end goal, then you're off track. And lastly, it's got to have some time frame. You got to say, well, when are you going to finish this? I have to do that for my club as president of 2 clubs. We have a club plan, a club success plan. And my job is to, by the end of our Toastmaster year, which is June 30th, by that date, we have to have achieved our goal of at least being a distinguished club, which is establishing 5 areas of success. And if you can do all 10 areas of success, you can become President's Distinguished, which is my primary goal for both of my clubs, which is a lofty goal, especially for one of the clubs, which currently only has about 9 members. But now that my other club has over 20 members, I know we can achieve that because we have time to do that. But will it take staying on top of people and making sure they're getting their goals done, whatever it is they're supposed to do? That's how we achieve success. So goals are important. So how can we support you? Is there anything specific that you want us to do to help you meet your goals? I want all of you to think about whenever you're at a loss for, I don't know what to do next, or I don't know what topic to speak on, or I'm not sure how to do this role. Are you asking for help and support? How many of you know people who struggle, but they think they have to do it on their own? And it's just torture. It shouldn't be that way in Toastmasters. You need to reach out for help. And should you wait until it's a crisis, like I have to give a speech in an hour and I haven't even written it yet, now I need to call my mentor so they can help me write a speech. Not a way to do it. Be proactive. Don't wait till it's a crisis. And do you want to set your own timeframes, or do you want us to nudge you? I've found in my leadership capacity in life in general is that if I want someone to be successful, I'm going to sometimes have to nudge those little birdies out of their comfort zone. And because if someone's uncomfortable, how many of you know people who will procrastinate on something that they're not sure what to do next? And then they need someone who'll step in there and say, hey, you're supposed to do this. You can't just say, I'm going to give a speech tomorrow and then realize, I don't think I'm ready. I'm not going to give the speech. You should keep your word, keep your commitment, but reach out for help in plenty of time. We are always here to help you. It's just, I can't tell you guys how many times I am not asked for help. How many times I've offered free workshops and seminars to companies and say, look, I'll come in and do a 1-hour free seminar for you. And they don't take advantage of it. It's like, but this would help. And that's what we do in Toastmasters. We offer free support, but you got to ask for it. Okay. So just keep that in mind. So here's a few things to know about club meeting roles. All the roles that you play for in a meeting help it to achieve success of that meeting. Who here has ever been to a meeting at work, and even before you've gone to the meeting, you heard this meeting is coming up, and all you do is roll your eyes and go, oh, not another meeting. That tells me you have bad meetings. You should have meetings that people would be excited about, where they think, wow, I'm going to get caught up on where we are with everybody. We're going to achieve the goals we came there for, that this is going to be an interesting meeting and I'll learn things from this and it's going to help me. If you don't have meetings like that, you have bad meetings. Toastmasters teaches you how to have good meetings, which also means you should have different people in your meetings play roles, because it's too big for just one person who's leading the meeting to do. Another thing too is that you need to find information on how to not only sign up for the roles of your club, but where do you get information on how to play these roles? I'll give you some of that information today, but I will tell you, each club is different. We all have our own cultures, our own way of doing things. Some clubs start their meetings with perhaps an invocation, which could either be something spiritual or it could be just something inspiring. Some people even start theirs with a prayer. I don't belong to many clubs like that, but there are clubs that do that, and there are clubs that start off with the Pledge of Allegiance. My questions often with that is, well, why would you say the Pledge of Allegiance if you're in an international club and you've got people in your club who are not Americans? What are they pledging to? Because you're only pledging to the American flag, which may not be their goal. So I try to be more sensitive and think, I don't think it needs to start with the Pledge of Allegiance in our meetings. I'm okay with them doing it in grade school, but not in our meetings. So that's my choice for my clubs. Although Balcones Club, we do start with the Pledge of Allegiance. With the Pride Club, we don't do it because I personally don't believe in it. Don't think I'm already a patriot. I don't need to say the Pledge of Allegiance to demonstrate to you I'm a patriot. Then let's talk about some of these goals then. But when you do sign up for your roles, know where you should go to sign up. And each club is different, but yet learn the logistics of that. I know a lot of people on this call are with my Austin Pride Club, and we have a program at this time. We may change it in the next year, but at this time it's on a separate from Toastmasters database called Easy Speak, which keeps track of all informations of what happens in every meeting. So if you were in the club, like Sukesh here was a member of the club several years ago, if he had given a speech back then and wanted to say, where do I find what that speech was about and where I left off? Well, Easy Speak has that in their record, because that's how we keep our records, and how you sign up for clubs, and how you RSVP for meetings. Can anyone tell me, why is it important for your club organizer or the meeting organizer to know if you're going to be at the meeting or not? Who can tell me? Why is that important?
Well, just so that you can plan ahead, and you could say get your ducks in a row, and if there are any emergencies, anything unexpected, you'll have a better way of handling of doing a replacement.
Excellent, Harris. And that's exactly it, because how many times, and I can only say this to the leaders, do we have club meetings that are planned, and then when the meeting gets started, it doesn't go to plan? You have some people who haven't shown up, or some people who couldn't play a role, and you need to fill those. So you need to know, well, who can I go to? I need to know who's going to be at this meeting before the meeting ever gets started. So let us know at least a few days ahead of time whether or not you're going to be at the meeting by RSVPing. That's a big help, even if you're not going to play a role. But here are the 9 primary roles that you'll see, and we'll go through each of these 9 so that you can understand how each plays a unique role in making those meetings successful. First, there is the Toastmaster. You generally need to be an experienced Toastmaster of at least a couple months before you should jump into that role. I don't recommend you being too new, because there's a lot of responsibilities under this role. The meeting is your meeting. You get to plan it any way you want. You make it your own, but you have to understand how the meeting is played, how you line your people up for their roles, and whether or not they're prepared for their roles before the meeting starts. A couple resources that teach you how to be a great Toastmaster. There's a great document you can look up and Google online called A Toastmaster Wears Many Hats. There's an amazing brochure or booklet that was produced a couple years ago. I tried to give it to everybody I could, called Master Your Meetings. Most of that is found in the Navigator today, but all the details of what you need to know about creating amazing meetings, but master your meetings. You could even take that back to work and use that in your workplace for having great meetings. There's also a script so that if you didn't know, well, what should I say in my meeting? There are actually scripts out there that can give you examples of here are some things you should talk about as Toastmaster. Some clubs have the Toastmaster create a theme for their meeting. And so the whole meeting runs around that theme. And so if you can come up with something fun, like like for our end of month meeting for Austin Pride Toastmasters will be Halloween. Everybody's going to be wearing masks or costumes. We're going to have best decoration contests for the background. So if people have virtual backgrounds, you might be able to win for that. Doesn't even have to be virtual though. You could be on here and just have a regular background. Like I think Lizzie, yours is just blurred, so we can't see your background, but you might even put all sorts of Halloween decorations behind you and see if you can win that contest. So that's a special type of meeting that has a theme, and the Toastmaster runs that meeting and creates that and makes all of this happen. So it's a big role, but you learn more about leadership and about project management than almost any other role you can play, because that's what you are. You're the project manager for that particular meeting. That's our Toastmaster of the day. Then some other meeting roles, the grammarian, an important role to listen for uses of good grammar as well as inappropriate grammar, because I know a lot of people are learning English as a second language, and grammar, English grammar sometimes is a very difficult part of learning English, and so they can give feedback. Actually, there are some people who have English as a primary language whose grammar is not all that great either. So the grammarian's job is to listen for uses of good grammar. They come up with a word of the day and encourage everyone in the meeting, when you speak in this meeting, see if you can throw that word in there. So not everybody can do it, but it's something to remember. One key I always try to do is make that one of the first words in my first sentence I say. That way, because after I start speaking, I'm going to not be thinking about what I'm doing, so I'll sometimes not remember the word of the day. So I put in my first sentence and I get that out of the way. But there is a script and a log for the grammarian to take down notes, because they're going to give a report at the end of the meeting about what they observed, what they heard, what great uses of language are, what abuses of language they noticed. And it's all in the guise of not beating people up. It's about being sharp as sharp as you can in communicating and giving people constructive feedback that will help them build their skills in the future. That's what we learn in Toastmasters. We all learn how to evaluate and give feedback in a way that they're going to hear it and learn from it. How many of you agree that when people want to give you feedback on how you could be better in your life, we're not usually open to that? So, well, learning how to deliver it in a way where someone's open to it is what we learn to do in Toastmasters. So if any of you ever get into management and you need to be able to give feedback to people in a way that they feel is supportive, that will build them, that they're going to listen to, you learn those skills in Toastmasters. So you can already see how many useful skills you can learn. Another role we have is the counter, who listens for those ahs and ums. I'm sure you guys have heard some great speakers even who every time they pause and begin another sentence, they say or ah, and it gets really annoying after a while. It makes it sound like they're not really confident, or it makes it sound like they don't really understand clearly where they're going. So one thing you want to do is get rid of those ums and ahs as much as possible. And that's what this person helps you to notice. So it's another listening role as you listen through the meeting. Again, Toastmaster Wears Many Hats is a great document that'll teach you some more about that role. You can actually get a mobile app that Toastmasters has out on that. And there is an counter script and log that you can get from the Toastmasters website or our district website, or you can Google it, because most clubs have even created their own. So the counter's role is another way of giving feedback in a meeting on how your communication is going. Some groups are small. Toastmasters clubs are small, and they combine the grammarian with the counter and the word master role, which could be a third role, but usually grammarian is also the word master. But if you can imagine a word master, counter, and grammarian, that's called a WAG, W-A-G. And so some of the smaller clubs combine these two roles into one big role. So you got to keep up with a lot of stuff, but you learn a lot. It's a good skill of mastering what you might call I'd say multitasking. A lot of us want to learn how to multitask because you've got to listen to the speakers as well as take down notes as you go. And then you're going to give a report at the end of the meeting on what you noticed. Another very important role, and these couple roles here are fairly easy roles. The timer role, a role for new people. Your job is just to let people know how things are going. And there's generally a time commitment that we make for our speeches in meetings, at least the prepared speeches, the evaluations of those prepared speeches, and our impromptu speeches or table topics. So the timer's role is to let you know where you are. And so if you are a speaker, generally, almost all the basic speeches are 5 to 7 minutes. So in Toastmasters, the timer's role is to let you know when you reach the minimum, which is 5 minutes in this case, you get a signal of a green, like my background might turn green, or you would probably have, or they could hold up a card, or some clubs have little stoplights if they're working in live, if you're going to in-person meetings. But you give the speaker a signal of where they are in their time. 5 minutes on a 5 to 7 minute speech gets you the green. 7 minutes gets you the red, saying you need to be finished now, but we will give you a 30-second grace period to wrap it up real quick and end it. And then you qualify for the voting at the end for best speech, whether it's evaluation, table topic, or speech. And when you're in the middle of the green and the red, the minimum amount of time and the maximum amount of time, we let you know where that middle is. So what's the middle of 5 to 7 minutes? 6 minutes. You see the yellow. So it's just like a stop sign, red, yellow, green. So, and the green is the thing to know, okay, I've made it that far, I could just end right now. But your speeches have to be a minimum and should be a maximum. And then you get a 30-second grace period always. That also means if you're doing table topics, it's only 1 to 2 minutes. You're given a topic that you didn't know you were going to talk about a moment ago. You get up and you speak about it for a minimum of 1 minute. You get the green. At a minute and a half, you see the yellow. And at 2 minutes, you see the red, but you still have 30 seconds to finish up. So as a speaker, you want to keep an eye on this timer. Evaluations are 2 to 3 minutes, which means at 2 minutes, green. At 3 minutes, red. And 2.5 minutes, you should see the yellow and say, okay, I need to start winding up. And this is just mostly how to teach you how to be very concise with your communication. Because how many of us have been in meetings before where people just go on and on and on, and the rest of the people are rolling their eyes, or people who don't say enough. So you got to know what's the right amount of time to speak, but don't speak too much because people are going to stop listening. So that's what you learn how to do, is to be a concise speaker and an impactful speaker. And the timer helps you to do it. The table topic speaker is the people who are chosen to do table topics. Generally, you don't give that to people who have big, important roles that they've got to stay focused on in the meeting. So generally, the Toastmaster doesn't get chosen, and generally the speakers don't get chosen, nor do the evaluators get chosen. If you have enough other people and you're not playing a role, you should get chosen for a table topic. Because if you're not playing a role, you still should be speaking in a Toastmasters meeting. So here's where you get a chance to speak. And so you'll get chosen. And we'll talk about the person who chooses you in a moment, but you should, as a Toastmaster, you should always be willing to step into that discomfort and answer a table topic, but also a topic shouldn't be very very challenging to you. One of the great things about table topics is you can say whatever you want to say, and that's your response. You could even say, that's a very interesting question, which makes me think about something else, and I'm going to talk about that. So you don't have to answer the question itself, but generally that does make it for a really creative way to master your speaking, if you can actually answer that question. Like, how many of you ever see these, like in a court trial, or I'm seeing this with politicians, where they learn how to answer questions without answering the question. So that's a skill you learn in table topics. So you learn how to respond without actually giving an answer. You can do that as well, but giving an answer is always helpful. I generally say you can't pass if you're not, if you're not ready, but you still will say, let me give me another one if you could. Your club might let you do that too. So we don't want to make people totally uncomfortable, but we do want them to practice these table topics to learn to get effective or more effective at their impromptu thinking. Another thing here let's see here, we'll go to the next one. The Toastmaster is the person who chooses the table topics. I'm sorry, the topics master. The topics master is the person who chooses the topics, the questions they're going to ask you, and who's going to answer them. And of course, that can be anything. You could either choose topics that relate to the theme of the meeting, or you could choose any kind of question that's in your mind. As long as the person who's going to answer it didn't know a moment ago what that question was. So you don't want to ask the question and then say, who wants to answer that question? That's not impromptu thinking, because now that person's already been thinking about what their answer is going to be. You ask the question and then you choose the person. So that's what the topics master or table topics master does to help people practice impromptu speaking. And sometimes people will give feedback to the topics master at the end, or the topics master may give feedback to the table topics people on how well they answered their questions. So different clubs do different things. The core of Toastmasters is the speaker, and the speaker is important. I would encourage all clubs to have at least 2 speakers signed up and 1 extra speaker to fill the space in case a speaker has to drop out, which happens a lot. But if they don't drop out, that one who was prepared can always give the speech at the next speech. It's never at the next opportunity. So they can give that speech at another opportunity. But we usually recommend delivering your first speech in a short time frame. So if you join a club, I'd say within the first month or so, you should give your icebreaker speech, your first speech project. You can find out more about that once you join Pathways, choose a path, and then open it up to your first project, which is your icebreaker project. Read through it, do the assessment tests and everything they ask you to do, and then begin to write your speech. The great thing about this first speech is they actually give you a framework to work from called a worksheet, a speaker worksheet that helps you to organize your entire speech. And then you could use that speaker worksheet from any speech you do in the future too, to show how do I have a great opening? How should the body of my speech look like? What would be my main point? What are my subpoints? How am I going to transition from each point to the next point? This is how you construct a great speech. What stories am I going to tell that will illustrate that? How can I add, after I've written my speech, add some humor to it, or some different word choices that will be more impactful words or more memorable words? So you can learn more about being a speaker. There are public speaking tips that are on the Toastmasters website. You can learn about gesturing, because gesturing is so key. I've been watching some comedians on YouTube lately, and I noticed that the most important part of them being funny is watching their face and their hand movements, because mostly what makes them funny is the looks they give and what they're doing with their hands to illustrate the situation they're trying to talk about. So it's not even about the words they're saying, it's about how they look saying those words and how they sound saying those words. So the words are important, but how you say those words is more important, and how you look saying those words is more important than both of those. So those are some of the early skills you're going to be working on in Toastmasters when you learn how to be better at public speaking. And you can learn them just as well on Zoom here or online as you can meeting in person, but it's going to be a very different experience. Like, one thing you're going to do is to look people in the eye. Of course, I always say never look people directly in the eye, because that's considered sometimes aggressive or perhaps threatening. Instead, look at people in a soft way, about right here. But online, your eyes are here where my camera is. So that's where I should be looking and nowhere else. You guys are over here on my Zoom. I don't want to look at you because I'm now not looking at you, right? So you have to remember to look here when you're giving a speech. So little things that you learn as you become a Toastmaster, and then you want to practice and master those skills over time. Making mistakes is a good thing. When you fail, you have a great opportunity to learn. If it worked for you, you don't have much to learn from that, so it's not helpful. So you might as well try new things and experience the failure and learn from it. That's what great Toastmasters and great anyone ever does to become great. Another important role, perhaps one of the most important, is evaluation, and there's an evaluator for each speech. So the prepared speeches have an evaluator who will observe the body language. They'll observe, did you achieve what you were going for, the goals of that speech? Did it come across as organized? Was I inspired to do what you wanted me to do? Did it have the impact? Was the content impactful? Was that good? So you're looking for all these different factors, although they do have a form that every project has. So like even for your icebreaker project, you want to send to your evaluator the evaluation form that tells them exactly what to look for. And you might also, as a speaker, want to talk to your evaluator before you give your speech to say, here's what I'm going for in my speech, so they know what to look for and can give you the best feedback. So talk to your evaluators beforehand, even send them your speech beforehand so they know what they're looking at or what you're going for before just getting it for the first time when they see you. So give them a little, you might even ask your evaluator, if you're a speaker, to work with you on practicing your speech a few times before you give it in the meeting. If you really want to grow as a Toastmaster and as a speaker, that's how to do it the quickest. Give your speech a couple times beforehand, and then when you come to your class, you're better prepared and you've changed it up so it's the best it can be. And you'll still keep working on it. So great speakers often give speeches over and over and over. So that's how you become a great speaker. But you got to keep changing it up and making it better each time. The general evaluator's job, well, their job is to give an evaluation at the end of the meeting on how everything went in their eyes. How did the overall meeting go? How's the Toastmaster? Did they do a good job? Did the Table Topics Master do a good job? How did the meeting go? So they also will introduce the other reports, the timer report. They'll introduce the WAGs report or the counter and grammarians. So they introduce those and give their general evaluator report at the end. And these are things you'll see in every meeting and players you'll see in every meeting. I will tell you guys that some other clubs have other roles. Some have a humor master. Some have all sorts of different types of roles. Like sometimes they'll have an invocator, someone who will do the invocation or inspirational speech at the beginning, just a little very short 1 minute something to inspire people at the beginning. So each club has some additional roles, but this is your basic roles you'll see in any Toastmasters club. Any questions so far about these? I know that's a lot of information. Don't worry about it. You'll learn as you go. Great.
So I do have a question.
Yes,
so you sign up for these beforehand, or this is like
ideally, yes.
Okay.
Some people though pick their roles or get asked to fill these roles at the meeting because someone backed out or someone didn't show up. So you're not expected to be perfect, but you're be willing to step into that role. So learn just a little bit about each. But when you're a new Toastmaster, of course, you're not going to be expected to know all of this and all these details. But you can learn about these and download the documents, the support documents that can help you. So if you're going to be a word master or a grammarian or an counter or a timer, download the script and the log so you're prepared. And then if they ask you, can you be timer here? Because our timer didn't show up, you'll be prepared. So, but again, you're not expected to be a master at this at the beginning. And choosing how you're going to learn and how fast you learn is this new education program called Pathways. We have a class coming up next week on basically all the things you need to know about Pathways. And I think everybody has probably received that at this point. I have a list of all the upcoming seminars that we're doing in continuing education, and that's the next one. It'll be next week. But you can also find it on our district website, which is TMD, that's toastmasterdistrict55.org. And we have a calendar there that lists all these events. So if you want to see other programs like this, you can find them on the calendar there. There are currently 11 unique paths that you can choose from that are going to help you achieve whatever your goals are. Now, if you're not sure which path to choose, you can take an assessment to help them give you ideas by doing this assessment, what might be your top 3 paths you might want to take. So you might do the assessment, or after today, you may have read through it enough to say, oh, well, no, I know what path is going to be best for me. I'm going to do this path. I'll let you know, don't fret over it. There is no wrong path. They all will teach you amazing skills. But you do need to choose a path. And each path has 5 different levels of competency. And you want to generally follow them from level 1 to level 2 to level 3. They get more and more complex as they go, each of these projects. But you're not locked into this. You can go to any path and do any kind of, or not path, but you can go to any level and work on that project. You just can't get credit for a level until you finished all the ones in that earliest level. So, but check out the Navigator for more additional information, but here's some basics you'll see. There are 11 paths, and here's 11 of those paths, and we'll go through each of these specifically, and you'll learn a little bit about what makes them unique. They're all very similar in some ways, and all paths have these 5 levels. And you have to finish 2 paths to become a DTM. But the first path is going to be what your goals are for this next year or so. Finish up this path as best as possible. Can you work on 2 paths at the same time? You can. I don't recommend it if you're brand new to Toastmasters, but it only costs $20 to buy a new path. So you could get it and work on a second path. But when you're through with one path, they give you another path. So, but how do you choose what path? Well, all paths have public speaking in mind. You're going to learn public speaking skills. All paths, you're going to learn interpersonal communication skills, which is what I do for a living, teach those skills. But then I encourage people to join Toastmasters so they can practice these skills I've just taught you. Well, Toastmasters International also teaches these skills in each of these projects. You learn skills a little at a time, but these 2 you'll find in every path. This one, dynamic leadership, adds management to it. So if you're a manager and wanting to become a better manager, this is how you do it. And they offer additional skills such as strategic leadership and conflict resolution. So they'll have projects that help you work on that. Effective coaching is another path. Here again, they have the 2 primary ones, and then strategic leadership is this specific goal of this particular one. But you'll also learn coaching skills and leadership. Engaging humor, that's one I'm working on now. That's my 3rd path I'm doing and just about done with. So I've learned how to be funnier, even though sometimes I think I'm not very funny. I've learned how to fake it till I make it. And I've been able to be funnier now. But this is basically a public speaking project, a series of projects, and you learn to get really good at writing speeches that are funny. So adding humor. Innovative planning, that was one of my first, and this is the most popular of all the paths. Again, public speaking and interpersonal communication are in there. Strategic leadership is what this is all about. So if you're a leader of any sort, this is what I'd recommend. And here you learn to master project management as an additional skill. Leadership development, you learn strategic leadership. It's its primary goal. And Toastmasters is where leaders are made. This project is specifically for someone who says, oh, I just want to learn to be a better leader. That's all. Well, you're still going to learn to be a better speaker and a better interpersonal communicator, because that's what it takes to be a great leader. But strategic leadership is that one. Motivational strategies, how to motivate people in a certain direction, how to persuade people in a management perspective. So in the workplace, if you're a manager, you have to be able to motivate your people. So motivational leadership and motivational communication are the specialty skills that you work on in this one. Persuasive influence is very similar. Here, though, you're learning how to lead in very complex situations. So if you're a high-level leader, this is probably the path I'd recommend you take. Strategic relationships, another great one for any level of leader. But you'll not only learn to manage people better and build better teams, but it's also great for learning how to be good at networking. So it's about mastering networking skills. Visionary communication. Obviously, it's clearly about communicating your creativity and getting people to follow your ideas. So it's about public speaking, but mostly it's about managing people through change, how to be an innovative communicator and leading people as you go. So those are our 11 paths, and you can find out more again at the Navigator site. In the booklet, the Navigator, you can download it or you can just go on site and watch. But get a mentor if you're new to Toastmasters, or if you're just working on any particular goal, get yourself a mentor. Even a highly experienced person like Harrison might say, well, I'm now going for a new goal that I'm not really sure how to get there. I'm going to find someone who has that experience and ask them to mentor me through this. I'm trying to finish my first DTM with this Pathways program, but I am clueless as how to actually finally finish it, because I've finished all the projects, I think, but I'm not really sure where to go now. I need someone who's done this who can help me finish that out. So I might have a short-term mentor to help me with getting that done before the end of the year. That would be my goal. Like by December, I will have those 2 projects done and have my DTM in the bank before the end of the year. So that would be my second DTM at that point. There are lots of leadership opportunities that after a while in Toastmasters, I'm going to ask you, and we're going to ask you to step into leadership roles. That mostly means that we'll ask some members to become not just leaders themselves, but become mentors. And then in a club, we might ask you to become an officer. And officers, there are 7 different officer roles, and each officer plays a different role in creating success for their club. You learn very different skills in each of those roles. And just because you say, well, I'm not really good with money, so being treasurer is not probably something I should take. And so, well, then maybe you should learn how to get good with money. I think you should become a treasurer, where you learn how to get people to pay their dues and how do you keep up with the bank accounts and things like that. It's a good skill to learn. So, and then at a higher level outside of your club, there are 5 clubs that create an area. And there are 5 areas that create a division. And there are 5 to 6 divisions that create a district. And there are 5 districts to create a region. So you can kind of see here saying, what is Toastmasters International? How does it look? Well, they've got a board of directions that, not many of us will ever get to know the board of directors, but you could. Most of you would never even know who your regional directors are. Our district director for District 55 is a woman named Livia Mitchell, and you'll probably hear from her a lot and her team. But then your division director, you probably won't hear from them as much, but you will hear a lot from the area director who's working with your individual clubs. And they help your club to be successful. But you could become any of these people. Now, unfortunately, there's no payment. You don't get paid for any of these. But you will learn a tremendous amount of leadership experience that you cannot get anywhere, because the good thing is you can practice these leadership skills and fail, but you're not going to be fired, which is probably a good thing. But you can work on them so that you can master these skills for the real world as well. Now, developing leadership skills, here's just a couple things to look at here. These are the club roles, leadership roles in a club. There's the president, who basically takes care of, make sure everything is getting done. They may not have a lot of specific duties. Their job is to check on everyone to make sure they're getting their jobs done. So it's basically a master delegation role, or picking up the ball and running with it when people don't finish what they were supposed to do. So the vice president of education, another major role, plays a lot of different things. They're in charge of the mentorships. They're in charge of making sure that people are getting their paths, choosing their paths and moving through their paths, and giving speeches and making sure the agendas are filled out and people are playing roles and learning. That's a lot. So sometimes they have a committee of people who help them with that, because delegating that job is important. VP of membership, your job is to not only try to find members, but also how to turn your guests into members and make sure your members are feeling valued and that they've got clear goals. So you're kind of getting them started initially and making them feel good about being members. The education director is also similar like that, but their job is to help people move through their education programs. The VP of public relations is all about showing off the club to the world, getting the word out to people about what we do and how fun our clubs are. So basically generating guests to come to the meetings. The secretary's job is to take care of all the paperwork and take notes on important issues. The treasurer's job is to keep up with the dues and any expenses the club has. Like if you have to pay for rentals or pay for Zoom, things like that, well, they make sure it gets paid. And they also let the club know where what the balances are. So receivables and account payables are key there. Lots of skills to learn. And the sergeant at arms just makes sure that the meetings run smoothly and that people do what they're supposed to do. And if there's anyone abusing the system, they step up and say, hey, we can't allow that. We can't have you in the meeting, or whatever. So, but they make sure the meetings are set up and they make sure they run well. The second area, the area division, the area director and the division directors make sure that all these clubs are going to be successful clubs. And right now, a lot of our clubs are struggling. So they've got some big jobs ahead of them. They need our help. So we try to help them with getting stronger. And you can share your skills, and there's lots of ways to do that as well. So, but you could actually take on some of these roles. Now, this would be for much later on, so I'm not going to spend much time with these roles, but you can learn about them. The district director, the program quality director, and the club growth director are known as the trio. They're at the very top of our district. Then there's a finance manager, administration manager. They got people who help them make this thing happen. So that's just a little bit about how Toastmasters works. So when you join, you'll get a welcome email. You decide, that I want to go ahead and make sure that I make them a safe sender so that I get their emails, because otherwise it ends up in your spam, and that can be a problem. All right, so check your spam folders. If you join and you don't get a message, that may be the problem. And then, click on the Getting Started button for Pathways. and then follow the steps you got to follow to get to choose a path. And then once you've chosen a path, you can access that path. This is what it looks like when you go to Toastmasters International and sign in with your new Toastmasters login and choose a special login for you. And it's going to say welcome. And then you can go to there's no longer a pathways, a tab on here, although you see it on this one here. Now they've moved the pathways tab under education. So you actually open up the education tab to find pathways. But here's what your pathways tab looks like. You have 3 choices. You can go to your base camp, which is where all your information is for learning. You could choose a new path, which generally you do that once and you're probably not going to do that again. But if you want to add another path, that's where you would go. And you can view the navigator. So if you want to go see the navigator or download it, that's where that is. Again, once you've done those 2 things, choose a path and view the navigator, you might not ever go to those again. But where you do want to go to is your path. But this is your profile, which if you click on where it says welcome your name, you can get this profile page that tells you everything about where you are in Toastmasters. So if you're thinking, I don't know, I don't remember what role I played here. You know, I was an officer one year, but I don't remember what year that was. Everything is here. And we'll tell you, did you complete it or did you not? Like I've been a club coach many times, but I've only been a successful club coach and finished it about 4 times. So there are about 3 or 4 others where, you know, I finally just gave up because the club wasn't willing to work on it. So it's like, fine. So that happens sometimes too. But this is an important page. You'll spend a lot of times on your pathways page where you can learn more. But pathways is what takes you through all of your education steps while you work on each project. We're not going to spend much time in this class about that, although, like I said, next week there is a pathways class, and I'll try to encourage our continuing education program to offer those at least bi-monthly, every other month, if not once a month. So here is your icebreaker. So if you did go on and say, I want to look at my first project, this is what it looks like. You'll open this up. You now have activated your first level and you've activated your icebreaker project, and it's going to be a lot of different steps, but you just basically go through this education program and then think about writing your icebreaker speech, which is a simple speech that's not even 5 to 7 minutes. It's only 4 to 6 minutes. So it's a little bit easier to do. And essentially, you're just going to tell us what you want us to know about you. But obviously, 4 to 6 minutes is not much time. So choose a very limited amount of information that you want to say about yourself and save the rest of it for future speeches. But like, what are 3 things that you could tell us about yourself? One thing I'd like to know is what's one thing about your past, what's one thing about your present, and what's one thing about your future that you could tell us? And essentially, if you create a speech over those 3 points and be very specific and tell a little story about it, essentially, that's your icebreaker. It's pretty easy to do. And we want your speech projects to be easy because if you make them too hard, it's too intimidating. And Toastmasters isn't about what you say to people. It's about how you perform, how you deliver your speech, not the speech itself. So, and sometimes you'll give the speech many times. You can give the same speech several different times, but if you give your icebreaker again, you're going to have to stretch it out to 5 to 7 minutes. And you might have to add them. But every time you do a speech again, always go back over it and change it up a little bit more. Because how many of you have ever looked back at something you've written in the past and just think, wow, I would never say it that way again? Well, you're going to change it. When I look at video recordings of myself just from last year, I'm thinking, oh, I need to re-record that because I wouldn't do it that way anymore at all. So, but that's how we learn. So in Toastmasters, there are many different ways to give recognition, but making our members feel valued is key. Just like in the workplace, the most loyal people are the ones who feel like you appreciate what they do, that you care that they're there. So in Toastmasters, we want to give lots of recognition. So we have awards that we give out in meetings for best speaker, best table topic, best evaluation, because we want you to encourage you to be the best you can. And when you perform at that level, we want to recognize that. It may not have been your best job. You might say, well, I could have done it better. Well, you did a great job and you got up there and practiced it. That alone deserves recognition because we want you to do more. And that's what we want to do, is to keep you motivated, to keep coming up and keep performing and keep learning. And that's probably one of the most important things we can do as clubs, is make sure to recognize your members and make them feel that their efforts, whatever they are valued. So stay in touch with them. There's many ways in which we do it. A lot of clubs have ribbons that they give out personally, but there's also online ribbons that Pathways has. And so you can probably see here a couple of those different things. And I'm not going to spend much time because I know we're running low on time here, but there's pins they give out and all sorts of recognition. You get recognition for each level you finish, and there are 5 levels. And then once you finish 2 of 5, then you become a DTM. That's another award you can achieve. So it's all about getting noticed for every step of the way you go. So you do a couple things, and then you get recognized and you do more. So we also have all sorts of awards that we give out, and we have contests that we do. We do a lot of things to give people a chance to practice being their best, but recognizing them is important. And we generally do a fairly good job, although I will say that's one of my weaknesses. I usually, because I don't reward myself a whole lot, I just move on to the next thing. But how many of you don't reward yourself for completing an important project? You just move on to the next project. And it's like, well, how good does that make you feel? It's like, nah, you got to make time to reward yourself, and other people should acknowledge it as well. Club expectations, get to know what your club expects of you and what their individual policies are. A lot of them don't have dress codes anymore. Some may have taboo subjects. Generally, you really can talk about things like sex and politics and such. But if you talk about that, you have to talk about it in a way that makes sure that everyone who's there is open to what you say, which means you got to talk about it carefully. That's your responsibility. If you're going to talk about topics that could offend somebody, you don't get to offend people in your group. Because how many of you would agree that when you speak, you want people to listen? And if you want people to listen to you, you can't say it in such a way where they're not going to want to listen to what you have to say. So, but you can talk about topics like for Balcones this next week, I'm going to talk about, my theme is, well, this is National LGBTQ Month, LGBTQ Awareness Month. And I don't think many people even know that. And I know most straight people have no idea and probably don't care, but I know that I don't have to make someone care, but I do want to teach them a little bit about what our experience as LGBTQ people is. Because someone who is not probably doesn't know, because they generally don't care. You know, it's not their issue, which I get. But anyways, I wanted to, that's what I'm going to be doing. So find out though what your policies are in your clubs, and don't cross the line wherever the line is drawn. But your job as a speaker is to make sure you know where that line is and you don't cross it. So that's what you have to learn to be an incredible leader and get people to follow you. And how we as a club will communicate with you, that we have club meetings as communication. We have officer meetings. We'll send you texts, emails, phone calls. Let us know what the best way you like to hear from us, because we need to hear from you and stay in communication. That's very, very important. Find out what communication methods work best. Like for our club at Austin Pride, our best communication tool, or one of them, is our Facebook page. And if we don't keep up with that, then it no longer becomes an effective communication tool. So we've got to have someone who keeps up with that and keeps it fresh, keeps people going to it, interested. But the clubs have their own resources. Some have newsletters. They have their own websites. They have their own policies. But we do that as a district as well. And we want you guys to be successful. So at this point, I want to just see if there's any questions you might have. This is the basics of everything you need to know, but by no means everything you need to know. But I hope this has been helpful. So I just want to find out if you have anything to say, comment, or question at this point.
So how do I become a member though? Like,
oh, that's a good question, Lizzie. You contact your primary contact person generally is your vice president of membership. Now, I know ours for Pride Club is fairly new. He's actually on here. He's Fabian. And you can contact Fabian about getting an application, but you fill out an application first. Actually, first you come to a meeting, get to know it, then get an application, fill it out. It costs very little to join Toastmasters. That's one of the reasons why some people don't make it a high priority, because it doesn't cost much. So what's the cost? I was like, well, but it is $7.50 a month, $7.50 minimum, because that's what international charges. But individual clubs may have their own fees. Right now, Austin Pride does not, but we will probably, once we have more expenses, we'll need to charge a little bit more, but it's never more than $10 a month generally. So, and we usually have dues every 6 months, but it's always either going to be the end of September or the end of March are the dues periods. And if you join in between, we just prorate the amount. So that's how that works. But there's a 6 months of dues that they ask you to pay. So generally it's $45 minimum. Some clubs have up to $60 or so to join. And if you're brand new, there's a $20 new member fee. And after that, even if you leave Toastmasters and come back 10 years from now, you don't pay that fee again. For people who used to be a member and they never were part of Pathways, yes, you can join and not pay the $20 new member fee and get a free path. So it's good for people to go. But and that gets you started. And then, of course, they'll give you a little more information, but learning about it, reading the Navigator is a great way to get started. And just come to your club and observe and start to take on roles and start to work on your icebreaker speech. Meet with your mentor and find out who your mentor is, ask for a mentor, and then start working with them as soon as possible on what your goals are and how to best reach your goals. Well, I want to thank you guys for your time. It's been fun working with you guys. I wish you the best in your Toastmasters journey, and spread the word. We do this meeting on the second Sunday of most every month. Keep an eye on our Toastmaster District website, tmd55.org, where you can find all the information you need to know on what you need to know and what's going on in the district and what's going on our calendar. So check with your clubs on where to go next, and I wish you the best on your Toastmasters journey. Thank you, guys.